So, I assume if you're here, you already know that Netflix's Fate the Winx Saga, just as it was about to explore the origins of Bloom and the Dragon Flame, came to an untimely ending. Maverick, an offshoot of Mad Cape Comics, had already been contracted at this point to produce graphic novels as companion material for the show, but with no third season in sight, they now had the opportunity to actually continue the story. Volume 1, Dark Destiny, came out last year to rather mixed reception and ended on a massive cliffhanger just as the show. Shadow War, Volume 2, is continuing the story, in fact ending this arc, effectively ending Season 3, but already there's more to come with Volume 3 in the works. There has been a shake-up in the creative team. Olivia Quatero-Briggs continues to be the writer, but Christian Guianardo-Goudreau has left the project, with Valeria Perry, an Italian artist, doing the artwork for this volume and likely the next. In this video, we are going to take a look at the plot of Volume 2 of the Fate the Winx Saga graphic novels, Shadow War, in detail and review. Spoilers, obviously. If you're not familiar with the plot of Volume 1, you can go to my review of Dark Destiny real quick. The first 5 minutes or so is the plot summary. Otherwise, let's see how this arc ends in Fate the Winx Saga Shadow War. We open in the realm of darkness. Beatrix has tracked down elders from Astadel and learnt that Briar, the eldest daughter of Marion, sister to Bloom and Bee, was sold by Rosalind to someone in this realm. Briar is a wild fairy, meaning she has control over the animal kingdom. As Bloom and Beatrix are talking this over, Musa appears in their home, to once again demand Bloom's return to the otherworld. She takes off the cuffs limiting her powers to show Bloom visions of what's been happening in her absence. Riven, Terra and Cat are dead. Vanessa, her mother, has been cruelly humiliated, and all these crimes have been perpetuated by Stella, disguised as her. Bloom is clearly distressed, but to Musa's bewilderment, she continues to insist that she cannot return. She is in fact dead. If you spend too much time in the realm of darkness whilst you're still alive, the realm will claim you. Farah finds Bloom in the middle of a breakdown. She explains that there are in fact ways to get back, but she must relinquish the thing most vital to her as payment. Farah herself, or rather Marion, sacrificed her memories of her own daughters when she left the realm of darkness for the first time, and only regained them in death. Bloom in turn has to give up the dragon flame by giving it to someone else. Back at Althea, they're rebuilding defenses against the next attack. Except the Winx, people still don't know that it isn't Bloom attacking the school. Flora tries to convince Aisha to let Silva know who he's really up against. In the ensuing argument, Aisha reveals that she blames Bloom for everything that's happened. As she says this, she walks right into Bloom and Musa. The girls tell Bloom about Stella's sudden switch, and Bloom understands that Darka, the Prince of Shadows, whom she's met in the realm of darkness, must be behind all this. Contact with Shadow brings out the worst in people's hearts and souls, and the only way to release Stella from the grasps of Darkar's agent is to break her heart. Aisha says that she doesn't think that Stella has much of a heart to break. Alone with Musa, Bloom tells her if she transformed, she would be able to travel back in time through Stella's memories and fix everything, but Musa's still wearing runic limiters. Musa refuses to try, saying she's a specialist now, full stop. Sky and Bloom are also reunited, and Sky confesses relief in the knowledge that Stella has been possessed rather than acting so cruelly of her own accord. It comes up in their discussion that Stella has loved Sky since she was 10. Next, Bloom reunites with Vanessa. She apologizes for not being there to save Vanessa from her cruel humiliation at Stella's hands and for causing her burns in the first place. As they're talking, Silva shows up to rally the troops. He laments in Zeus's name at the revelation that this is the real Bloom and the one outside is a fake. Stella is leading the charge against Althea alongside the creature and the animals. Bloom asks Aisha to let her cross the moat to meet Stella and try to break her heart. Stella is delighted to realize that Bloom has lost a dragon flame and is now an ordinary fire fairy. As Aisha and Sky approach to help Bloom, Stella transforms herself to adopt Bloom's current look. Meanwhile, Silver and Musa are fighting a pterodactyl. The creature chases Musa indoors, and Musa is shocked to see Riven. But he's not really there. He has found Farah in the realm of darkness, and has used a spare sprig of the resurrection plant to appear now as a ghost. He tells Musa that though he had made her promise to stay a specialist forever, because he thought he would lose her if she became a fairy once more, she should now stop running away from her own destiny and accept her powers. Back outside, Bloom admits to Stella that she is a coward and that she hurt them all by leaving. She apologizes first to Aisha, then to Sky, and then tells him that she loves him. Seeing Bloom and Sky in love's sweet embrace breaks Stella's heart and releases her from Darkar's thrall. Stella is horrified with all that she's done, blinding her own mother, deceiving and taking advantage of Sky. And though they managed to free Stella, Althea is all but destroyed. Musa steps forward to take charge of the situation. She is going to change the past. With the help of the other girls, Musa transforms. She and Stella enter Stella's memories to the moment where it all went wrong. When the creature touched her for the first time, it turned her into her shadow self, bringing out all the worst traits already in her. Refusing to be taken a second time, Stella blinds the creature. Now, everything is as it was. The girls in Sky find Terra and Kat still alive and arguing. Musa tells Terra that she's been letting her insecurities, her feelings that she's not good enough for Kat, sour their relationship, and the two of them make up. But, for all the happiness, things are not over yet. The school is still under attack, and without the dragon flame, Bloom is ill-suited to lead. They turn instead to Stella, but Stella is shaken from seeing the horrors of her own shadow side. She asks instead for Bloom to take her to the portal so that she can take the time to figure herself out in the realm of darkness by Beatrix's side. Meanwhile, Bloom and Musa enter Bloom's memories to return to the night when she burned Vanessa, and instead of starting a fire, Bloom confesses all her teenage angst and hugs her parents. On their return, Vanessa no longer has the scars. But as she and Bloom stare lovingly at each other, another attack begins on Althea. As the Winx girls face off against the animals, there is a sudden burst of flames. It's Beatrix. Bloom had given the flame to her. Beatrix reveals that the dragon flame led her to the Manticore Heart, which is related to their sister's powers. It was Darkar wearing the heart, and he admitted to her that he had bought Briar from Rosalind and corrupted her. Beatrix returns the Manticore Heart to the creature to reveal Briar, heir to the throne of Domino. As Briar, Bloom and Beatrix are reunited, Terra announces that the power of the Sisters 3 is here at Althea. 1 month later, we are shown the Winx partying at Althea. Riven takes Musa aside and sheepishly asks her to be his girlfriend. Briar, Bloom, and Beatrix slink away from the party. Meanwhile, Assistant Headmistress Aisha and now Headmaster Silver are chatting in their office. Aisha confesses her unease. She doesn't believe Beatrix's story that Darkar simply handed over the heart of the Manticore. Indeed, she is right. In the forest, the Sisters 3 are casting a spell. We are shown that when Beatrix confronted Darkar, she was possessed by one of his creatures, and Stella witnessed it. The issue ends with Darkar returning to the Otherworld with the help of Bloom, Beatrix, and Briar, the Sisters 3. Okay, I think it would be good if we started with some positives. Let's start with some compliments. I have 2 things that I'm really pleased with in this volume. One of my biggest criticisms for the last volume was that it was so lifeless and colourless, but that has improved so much in this one. The colouring is very beautiful in Shadow War, and now that the art style has grown on me, I'm really enjoying the visuals of the graphic novels. Similarly, I was disappointed that there was no proper exploration of magic, no transformations in Dark Destiny, that Musa was still not using her abilities. Well, her return to her powers is sort of the high point of this volume. Things are not perfect in this story, as we're about to get into, but for all its flaws, it definitely feels like Shadow War has improved on Dark Destiny, and that bodes well for the future, I'd like to think. Unfortunately though, Shadow War still leaves a lot wanting, and let's take a look at that through the girls' individual stories. Just as with the first volume, Flora is barely featured in this story. She is certainly not a main protagonist, she is in scenes, but she's never centered. Apart from her early interaction with Aisha, her one other scene of note is where she and Vanessa hit a pterodactyl on the head. This scene has no plot significance, that's why I left it out of the summary. Look. There are obvious limitations that the graphic novels are working with. Flora's integration into the Fate brand posed a problem by itself. She was already only superimposed onto the story with no real stakes of her own, so no wonder she didn't make an impression on the writer of the graphic novels. Also, there is limited page space, the story has to be relatively confined. I'm not mad, for instance, that Terra doesn't get much to do in Shadow War because in Dark Destiny she was a lot more prominently featured, so it feels balanced. There's just not enough time for everyone to be characterized in detail. Despite all that though, Flora's lack of presence remains bizarre. Whilst I was listening to Quetera Briggs's interviews in preparation for this, even about her other projects, I heard her mention that as a Latina woman herself, historically she has favored ethnically ambiguous Latina characters as her protagonists. Of course, just because she's of one ethnicity doesn't mean that she has to embrace a character of the same background, but in light of this preference that she has indicated, I found it odd that there is no attempt to find a place in the story for Flora and an exploration of her character. As for Terra, last volume, she and Kat were struggling because Terra kept being a bit unreasonable with her expectations around Kat spending time with her. Kat's schedule kept her from being on time to see Terra or make as much time for her, and in this issue, it is revealed that because Terra doesn't feel good enough for Kat, she read too much into this. The author implied that this was something that she was working through at the time, and that she always tries to put something of her own struggles into her stories to make them more authentic. I, however, didn't feel so good about this plotline for teenaged characters, because this is a genuine problem. Your partner not making time for you, not prioritizing your relationship whilst taking it for granted that you'll remain. But school-aged characters literally don't have control over their schedules. A valid relationship struggle that adults go through is rendered petty and unreasonable in this scenario. However, I do like the way that it is resolved in this volume. Terra is almost wanting and anticipating these problems because she feels insecure, and I hadn't considered that angle when I was reading Dark Destiny. I think I took it too literally and assumed that the narrative was agreeing with Terra. So ultimately, I'm happy with how it's resolved, and I'm looking forward to seeing this relationship evolve. Moving on to Aisha, I maintain that she remains the most consistent character from show to graphic novel, in the sense that in all her actions I recognize Season 1 Aisha. But therein lies the problem. She does not come across very well in my opinion in this volume. She is too bitter. She's very angry toward Bloom, mean about Stella, and all of this is justifiable because from her perspective, Bloom has abandoned them at a key moment, stupidly given away her critical powers, and Stella, possessed or not, has caused the deaths of her friends. She ends the volume as assistant headmistress, which, setting aside the oddity of promoting an 18-year-old to that position in itself, is kind of regressive for her character, because Aisha starts Season 1 very rule-abiding, very pro-establishment, and if she has an arc in Season 2, it's about moving away from that, prioritizing values over rules, friends over school, and opening herself up to new experiences. But she ends up back in that headspace at the end of this volume, even if it sort of makes sense why. The thing is, unlike in the Winx Club, in Fate, it's the school authority and people in authority positions in general versus the girls. You know, the Winx girls are school rebels, they break the rules, they make their own decisions away from the guidance of well-meaning, competent adults, of which there aren't many in this universe. So now, Aisha is part of that looming, constraining hand of authority against the teenage rebels that the Winx represent in this universe. She's sort of removed herself from the group. It's all coherent, it's a believable journey for her character, no issues in that sense. I just don't really like it. I don't know if this is worth reading into, but I noticed that Volume 1 did not have Aisha featured in the character cards at the end of the novel. Of course, this could be a simple error, but I did wonder if it's an indication for how her story might go, that she's no longer part of the main group, but something else. Volume 1 actually opens with the other girls dead and Aisha as headmistress in a flash forward, which I initially thought must have been the alternative future before Stella and Musa fixed it. But no, the picture of Bloom from the start of Volume 1 is sent to Aisha at the end of Volume 2, so make of that what you will. Next, Stella. With her, my mind is more on the things we left back in Volume 1, specifically the Neva Nadoria plotline and her dynamic with her mother. If you'll remember, last issue, Luna declares her niece Neva as her heir over Stella. I had a lot of fun anticipating a sort of Chimera plotline, and I was excited for the tension between Luna and Stella. There is still opportunity for that to be explored, but maybe it was only introduced to drive Stella's shadow side and not as a plotline in itself. Stella in Shadow War, again, it's like Aisha. It works, but it feels like we're rehashing some things. We get to see Stella's shadow side, then her horror at what she's done, her self-imposed isolation, her heartbreak over Sky, things we've seen from her before, just more extreme. And one would want progression, a point to all of it, which has not yet been reached. Her story in this volume ends with her wanting to take time with Beatrix in the Realm of Darkness, which is automatically endearing. We love Stellatrix. I'm glad that she apologizes to Sky in this volume because she essentially assaulted him in Dark Destiny, but there is definitely more to unpack with all that she's done in these 2 volumes in terms of her aggression and cruelty and violence. I guess we have to wait and see how Stella's characterization evolves in Volume 3. It's clear that we've firmly moved away from Winx Stella. Fate Stella is her own character with a lot of complexity that's going to be hard to handle, which makes me nervous. Speaking of Beatrix leaving the Realm of Darkness, we've got a serious problem. Have you spotted it? What is the Realm of Darkness? In the show, it seemed to be this dark dimension with evil creatures that Marion exiled herself to. But in the graphic novels, it's ostensibly being treated as the afterlife, maybe purgatory, a space that you can apparently come back from, as Farah did before the events of Season 1. Bloom has also left it, Beatrix has left it. So death isn't death, and a simple sacrifice is enough to release yourself from it. So, like, are Rosalind and Sebastian and Musa's mom and all these other dead characters in the Realm of Darkness? Why don't they just leave? I feel like we need better limitations and lore established for all this. In the coloring of the graphic novels, the Realm of Darkness is more muted. The actually dead characters are grayer compared to the living. When we first see Beatrix back in the other world, she's still in her muted tones, but by the end she's bright and ginger again, meaning that she's been resurrected. The power of the Sisters 3 is resurrection. So we have yet another way death can be overcome. Speaking of problems, Musa. I am really happy that we get to see Musa transform and use her powers in this volume. However, there are 3 issues with this plotline. First of all, I thought that it was a disservice to Musa's character for the decision to take off the cuffs to be the result of a conversation with Ribbon. I think that this was just meant to be a romantic moment, a way of having Ribbon come back into the story, but it was fundamentally dissatisfying. Firstly, Musa never committed to becoming a specialist because Ribbon made her promise. Musa, we know, had suffered for years with her powers, finally thought she'd made a breakthrough by helping people, only to have it blow back up in her face. She wore the cuffs because they gave her relief. It was a personal decision. Ribbon wasn't the one holding her there. Secondly, it's not a good look for Musa to say, "I'm a specialist through and through," at a moment where she could save the lives of her dead friends, including Ribbon, but then have a short conversation with Ribbon where he essentially gives her permission and then make the decision to reclaim her powers. Like, what a moment to be boy crazy, because that's the implication. Her friends' opinions, her friends' deaths didn't matter, even Ribbon's death didn't matter, but his opinion did. Thirdly, how did Ribbon even appear to Musa? He says Farah gave him a spare sprig of the resurrection plant, but that's not how this plant works according to previously established lore. Farah in Season 2 didn't just find a piece of the resurrection plant to visit Bloom. She sacrificed her physical body at the moment of death to preserve her magical essence, so that she could talk to them again. It took magic and foresight. The other crucial problem, of course, is time travel. I actually think this is a cool concept. The idea that you can change the present by changing a memory. Very new agey, very Seth, very Bashar. I like it. It's a cool ability to give to a mind fairy. But it definitely needed lore and limitations introduced immediately. Otherwise we're left with too many questions. When Stella and Musa changed time, some people remember the alternative future they were a part of, but others don't. Why? To me, it feels like only Musa and Stella should have been able to remember. In fact, that would have been cool inner conflict for them to carry. Also, why didn't Bloom return to the realm of darkness when time changed? Because that's where she would have been at the time. Of course, this is complicated even more when Bloom and Musa go back in time to prevent the fire that hurt Vanessa. That would fundamentally change Vanessa and Bloom as people. Bloom may have never even ended up at Althea had that not happened. She probably wouldn't have been so rash, and neither the events of Season 1 nor Season 2 would have manifested in the way that they did. It's been such a motivating factor in her life, and yet the only thing it changes is that Vanessa no longer has scars. So is that the power? You get to very specifically alter one thing, but everything else stays the same. Also, why stop there? Why not go back in time to stop Bloom killing Rosalind? Why not go back in time and stop Stella from blinding Ricky? Why not go back in time to save your mother? Why didn't Sebastian use Mind Fairy powers to go back in time and reverse what happened at Astadel? Again, I think this is a cool ability, and it could even have worked. But it needs more limitations and specificity that this volume didn't even have the possibility to explore, as short as it is, and it is used twice in that time. I also think that Bloom simply undoing the harm that she did to Vanessa isn't a good way to resolve their mother-daughter tension. I think it was a cool decision to have Vanessa return. I've changed my mind about that, because this is a key relationship for Bloom as main character. But wouldn't it have been better to focus on them as people rather than just get rid of the outer manifestation of their conflict? I'm going to take a moment to shill for the Fate prequel book, Lighting the Fire, because this book actually really impressed me. It's by the same author as the other book, The Fairy's Path, just different pen names, so I didn't have high hopes for it, but it really surprised and delighted me. There is not much in the way of plot in this book, but what it does is take the really surface level edgy characterizations from the show and approach them with surprising amounts of empathy for every character and make them more likable and understandable and relatable in a way that I really did not expect from a quick tie-in novel. Bloom and Vanessa appear very briefly in this novel, but it really explores Vanessa's inner world in those few pages in a way that really humanizes her, that shows her a lot of empathy as a person, someone who's fundamentally different from their own child and trying to deal with that, trying to understand them, and loving them so much at the same time, having to watch Bloom be different and strange throughout her childhood, not understanding it, but trying to protect her. I really appreciate Vanessa's characterization in this book, and it shows that you can really do a lot for these characters with very little. Even without going back into their past, there's so much to explore now with Bloom and Vanessa's relationship, things that even Winx didn't do. Bloom has found her real mother now. How does that change things? How does Vanessa feel about this? There's real stuff to explore, but simply taking away her scars feels very dismissive. Bloom has been established as having healing abilities. It's a theme of elemental systems that either fire or water can heal, so it would have meant more, say, if Bloom somehow healed Vanessa directly, because that at least would have been a full circle moment. Her powers that harmed her mother now heal her. When it comes to Bloom's other mother, Farah, as far as we've cobbled together, she was the Queen Marian. She gave up her memories to leave the realm of darkness and join the other world again. Just happened to be in a situation where she came into contact with her own daughters and then died again. What's Rosalind's part in all this? At what age did Marian/Farah leave the realm of darkness? We know she went to Althea as a student because it was implied in Season 1. So did she give birth to Bloom at a very young age to look school-aged when she came back into the other world? Every little thing not being explained yet isn't a plot hole, but we need some answers, and soon. Same with Briar. How did Briar grow up? Was she raised by Darkar? Did they have a father-daughter dynamic? Was she a slave? At what age did she become the creature? Does she even have a sense of personhood if she spent her whole life as Shadow? What did Sebastian want with her? What even is the heart of the Manticore, or the Dragon Flame for that matter, or the Sisters 3? Again, not a plot hole that we don't know these things yet, it's sort of the opposite of a hole. It's a mounting pile of questions that are beginning to look insurmountable. And look, the show didn't answer many questions either, it just sort of hinted at cool things and suggested you might get to find out more in the next season, and distracted you with new things in the meantime. But personally, I would like to see some questions answered. I know that with both comics and with TV, the authors always are incentivized to leave things loose and open, and therefore the writers continue to work and earn a living. But I also think giving satisfying resolutions to things is also a way to hook the audience, right? As a final note on Briar, this character was in part inspired not by Daphne, but by Roxy, in at least her powers, according to Olivia's interview with Winx Forever podcast from last year. We shall see if this inspiration is reflected in any other ways. So, some overall reflections. With the last volume, I said that the problem was that there were just not enough pages to introduce all these characters to a new readership and also tell a new story. And that is still the case. I do wish they had been allowed more pages to let the story build and breathe. But I don't think that's the whole of it with Shadow War. I think that there was way too much happening that didn't need to happen all at once. I really do feel like real creative discipline is to work within your limitations to make a story that makes sense and is satisfying within this length. I had the same criticism of the show, that they rushed through without proper world building and relied too much on the audience to do the heavy lifting. I think that this story may have been tighter without the time travel elements, which were always going to be a hard sell and introduce a lot of lore complications. Maybe there was a way to do this, but as it stands, the time travel thing feels more like a way to just retcon everything, to backpedal because of backlash or whatever, even though I don't think that's the case, because from Olivia's interviews last year, it seems she had already completed the writing portion for Shadow War before Dark Destiny came out. This was always how it was going to be. The way I think I would have fixed this was simply to make Musa accept her powers a little earlier and use them to help get Stella out of her shadow mode. She would have been the one to get through to her, bring the best out of her again. That way we don't have to retcon the emotional moments of Volume 1. Maybe Cat and Terra wouldn't have died at the end of Volume 1, they would just be in critical condition. Maybe Ribbon stays dead but remains in the story as a ghost. Maybe this is a special ability of Mind Fairies to communicate with ghosts, and then perhaps there's ways to bring him back later like Beatrix. I think this would have just been tighter without the time travel. Nevertheless, after all that whinging, would you be mad at me if I said I still enjoyed this volume? I just did. The colours are beautiful, the panels are beautiful. It's doing more of what I wanted it to do in terms of exploring different types of magic. I'm excited for the Dark Trio plotline. I'm curious what will become of Stella. Again, I guess I am enjoying the potential of it more than the material aspects of it, but that was always the case with Fate. And again, this volume improved on the last in certain material ways. The next volume might improve on this one, and maybe the next improves, and the next improves, and maybe by 2030, Fate can be truly great. On Olivia's end, she has mentioned that in Volume 3 we will get to see another girl transform, we will get to see other realms, we will get to see more deaths, although I guess those can be fixed now. We will meet the Daniels sisters and understand what was going on there. I don't know, overall I feel encouraged by all that, and I'm looking forward to Volume 3, which ought to be out within a year. As long as it entertains me and gives me things to ponder, that's enough for me on a personal level, but I'm still going to be honest in my reviews. I want to know your opinions on Volume 2. There's definitely more to dissect here that I couldn't get into. Let's not be too hard on the creative team though. It's worth remembering that they're not just defined by this one project on which they were already inheriting a lot of issues and fandom frustrations. It was always going to be hard. But yes, a pine away, I'm looking forward to discussing it more. I have 2 projects that could come next that are confidently in the works. One is a ranking of Winx Club's Season 1 comics, discussing the alternative lore and canon, and the other is my own Fate the Winx Saga Season 3 imagining. The comic ranking is going to come either way at some point, but I'm curious if people are still interested enough in Fate to be interested in the latter. You can actually get a sneak peek already in my Fate playlist. or in my unlisted videos playlist, so let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next time, hopefully sooner rather than later. Bye!